Why do so many ancient cultures talk about giants? The Greeks, Hebrews, and Norse all have stories about them, so why is that? There are several possible ways to answer this question, and in this video, we're going to dive into one of those possibilities. According to ancient texts, there's no shortage of evidence, actual material proof, that gigantic beings really did exist in the past. In fact, many of these texts claim that these evidences were publicly displayed for anyone to see and were even revered in temples, palaces, and shrines. Countless accounts of this nature can be found, especially in ancient Greek writings. We're going to explore some of these stories to uncover what they reveal about this ancient world and the possible truth behind these physical remnants of giants. Let's get into it. Starting with the ancient accounts of giants, we can kick things off with a tale from the Trojan War. According to this story, at one point in the conflict, the Greeks captured a Trojan wise man, or prophet, and forced him to reveal how they could finally end a war that had been dragging on for nearly 10 years. What the prophet said was striking. Troy would never fall unless the Greeks brought a very specific object with them to the battlefield. That object was the bone of Pelops. Pelops, according to the myths, was an ancient king, the grandson of Zeus on his father's side and the grandson of Atlas on his mother's side. For those who may not recall, Atlas was the giant titan who was condemned to carry the weight of the sky on his shoulders. Pelops, living up to his legendary heritage, was also described as being far larger than ordinary men, and naturally, his bones were said to be equally impressive and easily distinguishable from regular human bones. Now you might be wondering, where? Would they even begin searching for these bones? Well, fortunately, this wasn't an issue at all because according to tradition, Pelops's bones had been recovered long before and were publicly displayed in the sanctuary city of Olympia, the very same place where the Olympic Games originated. The full skeleton of the hero was kept inside a massive bronze box in the Temple of Artemis, except for one specific bone, Pelops' scapula. This bone was kept in its own temple in Olympia and was especially significant due to an ancient legend. It was said that Pelops's father had dismembered him when he was a child and served his flesh to the gods in a banquet. But the gods, realizing what they had been served, rejected the sacrifice and brought Pelops back to life. However, one of the goddesses, Demeter, had already eaten one of Pelops's shoulders, so they had to replace it with an ivory piece. This ivory replacement was what was displayed in Olympia, and it was this very bone that the Greeks supposedly took with them to Troy to secure their victory. But how does this help us understand the ancient belief in giants? The truth is, when we look at the extraordinary size of Pelops's scapula and the location where it was supposedly found, we get a solid clue to understand what this object really was. Olympia is located in a valley along the Alpheus River, on the western side of the Peloponnese, an area rich with prehistoric mammal bones, including those of gigantic mammoths. One of the most durable and largest bones of these animals is, in fact, the scapula. And there's more. Very ancient semi-fossilized bones have a fascinating property. When polished, they can resemble ivory. So it's entirely possible, as Harvard historian Adrienne Mayer suggests in her book, The First Fossil Hunters, that the myth of the great ivory scapula developed from the discovery of a mammoth bone, which was seen as something sacred and linked specifically to a local hero, Pelops. Over time, it became displayed as a relic of this giant king in the sanctuaries of Olympia. Whether this explanation is accurate or not, what's undeniable is that there was, without a doubt, an object in ancient times that was worshipped as Pelops' scapula. Numerous ancient authors mention it, and even Christian authorities like Bishop Clement of Alexandria in the 2nd century AD reference it, although, of course, in his case, he condemns the worship of the object. But as I've already hinted, this is far from the only account of giant bones we find in ancient Greece. Another story, perhaps even more intriguing, is that of the coffin of Orestes. According to Herodotus, a Greek historian from the 5th century BC, the Spartans also had to retrieve enormous bones to win a war. In this case, they were fighting against the Tagatai from the region of Arcadia. Ancient records say that the oracle of Delphi, a place of revelation to Apollo, told the Spartans that the only way to win the war was to bring Orestes back to Sparta. Orestes was a hero from the Trojan War who had already died centuries earlier. So what the Spartans needed to bring back to Sparta were his bones, which they immediately set out to search for. The problem was, unlike Pelops' scapula, Orestes' bones weren't displayed anywhere. The suspicion was that they were buried somewhere, but no one knew where. That is, nobody knew until a Spartan knight called Lycus received a promising clue. He was on a mission that many considered impossible, but his persistence and courage led him to a surprising discovery. Lycus, guided by ancient signs and the advice of wise men, followed a trail that led him to a hidden place where, against all expectations, he found the bones of Orestes buried in a secret tomb. This event became a historic milestone for the Spartans, as it was with these bones that they managed to turn the tide and finally win the war. These stories about the bones of heroes and giants in ancient Greece show us how beliefs and myths were intertwined with the historical and cultural events of the time. The search for sacred relics, such as the bones of Pelops and Orestes, was not only a matter of faith but also of power and identity for the ancient peoples. They reveal the deep connection between traditions and the forces that shaped the destiny of civilizations. Through these narratives, we can see how the legacy of giants and heroes endures in stories that span time, influencing the way we understand the ancient world to this day. And who knows, as we continue to explore these mysteries, we may find even more clues about the relationship between legends and historical facts. If you enjoyed this content and want to delve deeper into fascinating stories from antiquity, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, take the opportunity to check out the Gods playlist, where you'll find more videos about the myths and mythical figures that have shaped human history. Don't miss out on this journey.